Good afternoon, everybody. This is Francesco Abbruzzino with the Francesco Abbruzzino Show, and we got an excellent interview set up today. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. His name is Ken Johnson, and he's the author of Unbroken Circles for Schools. And Ken is going to come on and discuss his book. And coincidentally, we're going to discuss the issue that I brought up yesterday on the show, the lunacy law with the new Pop-Tart law that's come out in Florida. So Ken, why don't we go ahead and start with your book? I do have your website up on the screen. I have a picture of it. Discuss a little bit what the Unbroken Circles for Schools is all about.
Okay, Unbroken, new book that'll be coming out from SYP Publishing. It's a Florida publisher, and what it does is it uses my experience as a mediator and restorative justice facilitator to come up with solutions for the school system so that they don't have to incarcerate these children. They can improve test scores, they can improve student performance, lower tardiness, lower absenteeism, and basically save a lot of money for the school district. So it's a sane approach of resolving conflicts and building relationships to empower the community to take control.
Well, that sounds like an interesting book. Now, this just came out, though, right? You just got it out on the market?
It's coming out August 2014, so we're going through the final edits right now, getting it ready to go to the publisher.
Okay, now I'm on your site, and you have some artwork on there. Is this some of the artwork that is... It seems like Indian artwork. Is that within your book, and what connection is that to your book?
No, I'm Native American, and I'm with the Florida Tribe Cherokee Indians.
Okay.
And so I do feather artwork, and some people wanted to see it, so I put down my page just so that they could see what I've been doing with that. I believe that being allowed to express yourself is something that allows communities to become more dynamic, and that's something I also talk about in the book a little bit. I don't talk about art, but at least the ability to talk and engage in dynamics and express yourself in different ways.
Now, how receptive do you think will help kids out there that have these different challenges that they're facing?
Well, I think that we have begun to start legislating morality, and we believe that if something is to happen, it's got to come from the government, that they've got to legislate a bill for us to have any type of logic, and that's what we'll talk about with the Pop-Tart bill. But I see things differently. I think that people are wanting to find ways for the communities to become stronger, to engage, to get a voice. And this says how they can do it in a way that doesn't involve protests or anything else. It's collaborative. I think that the dynamic that I try to bring into the equation is something that people are wanting. I think they'll be receptive.
And it says that, and I'm just reading a little bit on your site here, that the collaborative justice programs are dealing with catabolic conflict in schools, businesses, governments, communities, civic groups, and religious institutions. So let me ask you this: if someone were to read your book and they're having these issues that you're covering in it with the kids, how will this change them? How will this give them a different perspective to go out and handle this type of issue that you discuss, the subject matter in your book?
Okay, well, when I wrote the book, in the introduction, and every once in a while I'll put it in a chapter or two here or there to remind people, but I started playing with rubber bands. That's what got all this started with the circles. And basically the world of mediation, the world of restorative justice, never really got together and meshed. And here I was, a mediator and a restorative justice professional. I was the odd man out.
Okay.
Today, that's not so uncommon. You're seeing that now, especially over in England and Europe, and now we're seeing some of it in the United States. So what I did is I came up with ways that I can layer different techniques. Some of it is daily. Some of it is as needed. And we layer all these techniques so that it's kind of like pushing out multiple rubber bands, that a child may break through one or two, but they're not going to break through all of them. And the whole idea is that we use a thing called reintegrative shaming. That if a child has done wrong, instead of shaming the child, saying you're a bad person, we say your actions are bad, and let's talk about the actions. And so we try to bring in atonement, which is something that we don't talk about anymore in society, that making your wrongful actions right in the eyes of everybody concerned. And so it changes the child's mind and how they perceive things. It allows them to talk about issues rather than bottling them in or keeping them away from people or lying and trying to cover it up. And it makes it where it's a different dynamic that way. Also, it brings in what we call community of care. We're more nomadic now. The average person, they leave a place about every few years or so. And so what this does is it brings in people that are important to the parties involved. So the offender, you may have a coach that they really look up to. You may have maybe a pastor or whatever. And so when we get together in these conferences, or we get together in panels or circles or whatever the program is that we're employing in the overall scheme of things, that there's somebody there that they look up to, and so their voice is going to be very important. And so it makes them more accountable, because in our society now, really there is no accountability. And you just, if you have a problem, if you have an issue, your voice goes unheard. And if you do an action, nobody cares about it, or they just throw you away in jail. So this brings a little bit more sanity into the equation.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, okay, your book, it's to help people, like, empower communities and schools into better helping these kids that are troubled youth, that have some type of behavioral issue, I'm assuming. Now, I look in there and I say avoiding arrest, and over 2 million juveniles are arrested and considered criminals. What severity are you dealing with? Are you talking about a kid that's just sitting there and he's throwing spit wads at a girl, or are you talking about a guy that's going out and robbing someone, a 15-year-old kid with a gun? Are you saying that it's better to try to reform them versus putting them into the juvenile system?
The main issue is there's not a lot of first-time offenders that they're robbing people.
Okay.
There's not a lot of those violent kids doing crimes. I'll give you a good case in point. When Charlie Crist was governor, he appointed a blue ribbon panel. That blue ribbon panel, their suggestion was that we needed to arrest 7% of the juvenile population of Florida, and try them on felony and misdemeanor charges rather than putting them through the juvenile justice system. And the whole purpose of this report was so that the Department of Juvenile Justice could get $500 million from the state. And these kids were getting arrested for trivial offenses. And then after they got arrested, they kept getting rearrested, and it led to those kids that we hear about where they're robbing and everything else. This says, look, if you stop it here, you give them a voice, you give them some type of control system, empower the community to have a control system, then it won't get out of hand. Those children will not be involved in this. And studies have shown when the children enter into programs like I'm talking about, that out of 1,000 kids, you may have 7 recidivate.
Okay.
Whereas 93% of the programs that we have to keep kids out of the system, the kids recidivate because there's no accountability for them.
And that was going to be my next question, is the success rate with people that institute this type of program. And, one thing you did that rung a bell with me is with the 5 million. So and this goes sort of into the whole Pop-Tart law. Was there an incentive there for them to crack down on that zero tolerance with kids? More so because the money was there at the state level with the juvenile program, like that 5 million you mentioned?
Well, it's 500 million.
500, I'm sorry. Thank you.
500 million. Okay. And there are incentive programs. We see that in the education system. In my book, we talk about what's known as the test-to-prison pipeline. Everybody knows about the older school-to-prison pipeline, but the test-to-prison pipeline talks about the former FCAT and how schools were, for whatever reason, sending kids to jail right before it's time for them to test. So their test scores would not be good, and therefore schools got more money. And
I've never heard that one.
And so, yeah, and what's funny is I go around and I teach about my program, and a lot of the mediators used to be educators. And they just left the education system for one reason or another. Some of them may be substitute teachers now, but a lot of them have left. And they tell me over and over and over the harm that the FCAT had done for children that were of, normally they came from a different race other than white or Caucasian, and usually they came from poor homes. And they was talking about the harm that it did to the students, because they would be suspended, they'd be expelled, they'd be arrested right before testing. And then all of a sudden the school said, oh, we got an A, we got a B, and then they got their funding.
You know, and I could see some administrators doing stuff like that. And you know, not doing it sort of under the covers, but I can see people, because there's so much focus and attention on getting those A scores out there. You know, in Florida,
Right.
to be the A school, the B school, the C school. Now, how does this go into that whole Pop-Tart scenario where the zero tolerance, which just drives me crazy, you know? And I was reading some stuff yesterday that they can no longer be arrested for, like making your finger into a gun, pointing a pencil at someone, and going poo 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 like a gun. I'm glad the governor stepped up and signed that into law. And go ahead, I know you wanted to touch on this issue with the Pop-Tart law.
Well, I am glad that the governor did sign it, and I'm glad that the legislature did put it through. But my wife's grandmother, God bless her, she summed it up the best I'd ever heard, because she was absolutely astonished that it took grown men and women in the legislature to have to draft up a bill so that grown men and women in the education system and in law enforcement wouldn't arrest, suspend, and expel kids for being kids.
It is crazy, isn't it?
It is, but the thing is that, you know, Florida, we arrest 58,000 kids a year. We are the top arrester of juveniles in the nation.
Really?
And I've wrote about this. There's one with Social Justice Solutions, Sister States, and I've wrote about one in Florida, Behind Bars and Behind the Gun, with the Meads. And I've actually been nominated for 3 social justice awards based off those 2 articles.
Wow.
And it talks about this is a nationwide epidemic. We are a society that, for some reason or another, we're attacking juveniles on every level. I just read a report today about the Department of Children and Family Services and how they're cooking the books on the number of kids that are dying due to neglect and abuse because they're not handling the issue.
Huh.
And these kids come into schools, they have issues, they can't talk to anybody, and then we go and we arrest them with this Pop-Tart law or Pop-Tart issue that now this bill covers. But it doesn't go far enough, because, for instance, the toy gun issue, if it's more than 2 inches long, a child still can be arrested for having a gun in school.
Yeah, I saw that, and that didn't make a lot of sense. And who was pushing behind? Who was behind trying to make that restriction at 2 inches? Because you would think 4 inches or something like that, 6 inches.
Well, you have to understand how legislature is, and you have some good legislators. For instance, Senator Evers, he's been behind a lot of great bills to try to make things a little saner when it comes to juveniles, and a lot of his bills have just been dying left and right, even though he's the chairman of the Criminal Justice Committee. And so when you get into these committees and things of that nature, the public, they really don't get a chance to see what all was said, who all's behind what, and there's a lot of negotiations going on.
Right.
So as far as who's pushing for the 2 inches versus just saying there's no limit, I have no idea.
No idea.
But the thing is, you still have other things. For instance, we've not taken the school resource officers out of the school systems.
Well, let me ask you that there. Why would you want the SROs out? Because I know down here in Venice, there's a huge push. The county, the local sheriff, wanted to take an SRO out because it was impacting his budget, and it was within the city limits, the school. So the city had to pay for another local VPD to go in there so that we had 2 SRs. And I know a lot of the parents wanted the SROs. They felt very comfortable with them there.
Well, the reason why everybody wanted SROs in schools was because you had Columbine.
Right.
And that's what started it. And no one ever looked at what happened with Columbine. Those students, they were actually on medication to boost their self-esteem. So they were on mind-altering drugs because they had low self-esteem, and they went in and started shooting people. Not saying the drugs caused it, but definitely could help.
Right.
And people don't, we only get snippets with the media. We never see the full case. And so there, in the 1990s, a guy by the name of DiIulio, John DiIulio Jr., he was a Harvard professor. He wrote a best-selling book, and he came out with the super predator theory. Well, now it's a myth. We know it's a myth. But he said that juveniles were becoming more murderous, and they didn't care about people. And he really targeted male students, saying that they were godless and unforgiving. And so when the Columbine took place, and we see this best-selling book, our culture started changing. It takes 10 years to change culture. That's what I do. I'm a culturalist. I study cultures. And it takes 10 years to change a culture. And people, they started seeing kids as being murderous thugs, even though that they're not.
Right.
And they wanted these school resource officers. And I talked to some of the school resource officers because they were making some crazy arrests.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked them what was going on. They said, look, if I see somebody breaking the law or there is allegation that somebody's breaking the law, I have a duty to arrest them. And so there's not real much discretion when it comes to what they're able to do and not do in the school system. And with this Pop-Tart bill, even though it says that the school districts can't do anything, if a school resource officer sees a kid saying something disparaging to another student, that's assault. So they're still not immune from that. If they see a kid push another kid, that's battery. Because Florida laws, they're so liberal with how we translate things that they have no choice in many circumstances but to arrest. They're told from the top up that, you know, hey, look, we need this. We need you to make arrests.
So we're going to still have that zero tolerance craziness with the SROs there then? Because it's just mainly the administrators. Well, let me ask you this. How could you give a parent a warm, comfy feeling about taking SROs out of the schools? Because I know with Columbine and all the school activity, I just don't see parents buying into that. How do you make that transition so you start getting them comfortable with the idea that SROs aren't necessary?
Well, I think part of it is looking at the dialogue of what the zero tolerance policies has done so far. Look at the number of schools that have been on lockdown for entire days because somebody brought a Nerf gun or somebody did something that was nothing, and actually try to talk about the overreacting that this has caused and the harm this has caused for students, and start having open discussions. It's not going to be something that'll be overnight. It's going to be an uphill battle.
Right.
And because you've had 10 years of a culture to change and believe and buy into this bunk that's not true. If you look at the facts, you'll see that it's not true. But people go off of feelings more than fact. And so you'll have to have open dialogues. You have to have a lot of open meetings. And that's something that people are not used to anymore. There's not a lot of open meetings anymore. Even when the meetings are supposed to be open, it's normally held during the day when people have to work. And so you have to make it where it's more accommodating to the average person and inviting and allow them to actually speak. I remember going to a public forum a while back, and they said, oh, there'll be no public comment. You'll have to email us with any questions you may have later.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a total change of how we do things and going back to the old ways of doing things with how we engage the public with the governmental agencies, and then come in with some new innovative thoughts like what I'm bringing in with the collaborative justice.
Okay. Well, it sounds interesting, and I'm probably going to go ahead and check it out, check the book out, and read it. And I would encourage all my listeners to. Now, when I put your information out there, I'll do a separate interview, and we'll put a link to this page for anybody that's out there and is interested in your book or interested in hearing more from you. But you can go ahead if you want to list your, if you have Facebook or Twitter, if you want to list out your website or any other information, because you not only are you the author of this book, I take it you set up these classes with the schools if they contact you, and you can cover this material and what they can do to change the direction their school may be going in and how they handle their kids, right?
Right. A lot of it, I'll do the classes. Normally, if it's local, I'll just go do the classes for free just to get the information out. And like with the book, the programs I talk about, people don't have to pay for those programs to institute them, which is kind of unique for the field I'm in because everybody's trying to make a buck,
right? And
I'm not. But if somebody wants to get a hold of me, they can go on Twitter. My Twitter account is @KenJohnsonUSA. You can also reach me off my website, which is a long website. It's kenjohnson.americasculturalist.tripod.com. I believe you have a link to that,
yes.
So they don't have to type out all that mess. And they can also email me. It's a weird email because I'm using some of the Cherokee in there, UKU Johnson
okay.
@gmail.com. And they can also, they can email me there or Gmail me. But those are the best ways to get a hold of me. I do have a little Facebook. If you go on Facebook and type up Ken Johnson author, you'll also pop up my Unbroken Circles page there.
Okay, I'll see if I can include that in the link and put it out there. Now, this will be airing on my live show. I'm also going to put out this separate excerpt after the show. So it was good talking to you, Ken. Any closing remarks?
All I'm saying is that people need to get involved. You need to see what's really going on out there. For the legislators that supported this bill, please write them, tell them thank you. They don't hear enough gratitude. And also, for instance, there's programs like 98.155, it's Florida statute that allows restorative justice centers in every single circuit. We don't have those in any of our circuits right now. You can talk to the state attorney's office and tell them we need this. There's already laws in place, but the communities have got to get involved, they've got to get vocal, and they've got to demand these new practices to take place.
Well, I think one of the biggest issues out there is just awareness, community awareness on the different bills. Like, I can guarantee you most people in my community aren't aware of the Pop-Tart law passing. So
no, they're not.
Yeah.
And most people don't even know of the 985.155, which has been around for years now, and we don't have it even though it's been in law now for years. And all they have to do is call their state attorney's office and tell them that we want you to establish a neighborhood restorative justice center. And that's for first-time juvenile offenders. And if you have a kid if your child is going for a judge, you can make a motion that child go to a restorative justice center per that statute. You can demand that.
There you go, folks. Nancy Dieter is our state senator in this area, and Holder is our congressional rep, but he's leaving in a couple months. He's not up for re-election. So, well, thanks a lot for everything, Ken. It was very informative, and I wish you best of luck out there.
All right, thanks, sir. You have a good day.
All right, see ya.